Well, good morning, Mr. Ali. How are you this morning?
Hello, hello. I'm doing perfectly fine and I'm drinking my chai, so it's all good.
Absolutely, chai essential, particularly since, yeah, chai. Um, I'm so glad that you are available to speak briefly with me today. We're so looking forward to having you at the ACTFL 2020 World Languages Convention and Expo. Thank you so much for being part of this. We're really looking forward to having you there. I'd like to ask you just a couple of questions to help introduce you to the many, many teachers of world languages who are members of ACTFL. So I understand that you grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area as a Muslim Pakistani American. So what languages did you speak growing up?
I'm still Muslim Pakistani American.
Yes.
And speaking about languages, even though I was born and raised in the Bay Area, California, in the year 1980, the year of Empire Strikes Back, to two Pakistani immigrant parents, my parents thought it'd be hilarious not to teach me English, because who needs English in the United States of America? So if you're an immigrant or son of or daughter of immigrants, you must have heard of the phrase "fresh off the boat." Or they said, oh, our parents burned the boat, we assimilated. My parents brought the boat inside the home. As the kids say, they gave 0 F's about integration or assimilation, so I couldn't speak English. I grew up with 3 generations: my grandparents, my parents, me, my cousins, my aunts. It was like a revolving door. I call it like a Pakistan halfway house. There were always people, food, and we spoke Urdu. So I didn't speak English until I was dropped off at Charles Hathaway Preschool, and I only knew 3 words of English, which was "shut up," "idiot," because my mother used to say "shut up, idiot," and "uh-oh, pasgedio," which was my version of saying "uh-oh, spaghettio," which was the Campbell soup commercial. That's it. That's all I knew. And so I learned English actually the next year, thanks to ESL class, English as a second language, in James Leach, where it was me, 2 Chinese immigrant kids, and a black kid. I think the only reason they put the black kid in there because he was the only black kid. So he's like, "Why am I here?" I'm like, "I don't speak English." So that's where I learned English. And my parents, I'm like, you maybe could have taught me a little bit of English, and they're like, "You did fine. We knew you'd pick it up." So that's my history, if you will, with the beginning of my history with language and languages. I'm bilingual. Spoke Urdu at home with my parents, and elders still do. Eventually took French in school, which was maybe a mistake because I'm like, I'll pick up Spanish in California. I don't know why I thought that. And then in college, I took Arabic. And so I can read Arabic, I can write it, can't really speak it. My French gets activated once in a while. My Urdu's pretty good, but it's still rusty now in the sense that like I lost the, if I go back to Pakistan, I get it back in 2 weeks. And I kind of speak English okay, like most other Americans.
So yes, you're multilingual. We'll give multilingual to you. Was there a pivotal teacher along the way as you went through the American school system?
Several. I'll mention this in my talk, but I was this shy, awkward, brown-skinned Muslim kid, ESL, left-handed. If anyone comes from Asian cultures, the left hand is only used to do one thing, so they tried to convert me to right-handedness. I used to wear husky pants. I was like crushing it, as you can clearly tell. And this was the 80s when like there was no body positivity language, so you were either fat or normal, and fat kids used to get made fun of every day. So it was like World War III every day. But I always loved storytelling. And I remember in 5th grade, there was this teacher, Mrs. Peterson. I call her like the Kentucky Mary Poppins. She came in for a year and left and made us do 20 creative projects. And she made us one time do a 1-page short story. And I wrote a 10-page short story. I did Wajahat Ali's rendition of Robin Hood because at that time, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was coming out, starring Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman. And growing up, like you said, as a Muslim kid, we had no representation. The only thing we had was Apu, who's a 2D cartoon character voiced by a white guy. But when you're starving for representation, you take whatever you can. So we saw this movie, Robin Hood, and Morgan Freeman's character is a Muslim. And he's like a badass in the movie. We're like, oh, that's so cool. Look, he's a Muslim. He prays in a way no Muslim does, but whatever, Hollywood, we'll take it. And so I wrote my rendition of Robin Hood, like 10 pages, and she gave me an A++++, and then told me I had to recite the story in front of my homeroom. And I'm like, please don't make me do it. She goes, quiet, Fed, you get up and recite the story. And so in front of my homeroom, I recited the story for the first time, and they loved it. And I remember I went home and told my father, and he's like, "Oh, you might have a talent." And I remember, I was just mentioning this. I was giving another speech in front of a nonprofit to help Pakistani kids right now. There's a flood, but also when it comes to education. And I said, really, the only two things that have helped me in life or what set me apart is luck and education. That's it. Everyone says hard work, talent, luck, and education. Along the way, there were teachers who said, "You got something." I remember my sixth grade teacher. Like I met her in a line for a movie in high school. She goes, "Wajahat, I remember you. You were in my first writing class. You wrote an essay that was really good." I'm like, "How did you remember that?" And I remember then in college, my final year, my teacher, my short story writing teacher, Ishmael Reed, who's a titan, right? A MacArthur genius. He said, this was right after 9/11, and he said, "I think your people, Muslims, those who look like you're going to get hazed for the next 10 years. As a black man, I could tell you that we've been going through this for 400 years. The way we fought back is through art, culture, and storytelling. I think you have talent. You should write a play." And that's what got me started to write a play, which then launched my career.
Thank you for sharing that marvelous story. That explains a great deal about who you are and where you've been. So you've also worked abroad. You're very US centric in the work that you're doing, but you set up Generation Change chapters in 8 different countries, including Pakistan, right? And Singapore. Has that travel abroad influenced the way you view America, yourself in America, the work you do?
So even though I'm very American centric, I have always, and since the beginning of my career, written stories that are by us for everyone. That's my motto: by us for everyone. Culturally specific tales for a universal global audience, diverse audience, I should say. And the reason why I've done that is because I grew up in the diverse Bay Area community. I was oftentimes the token Muslim, the token brown kid. I was forced to be the cultural ambassador of 1.7 billion people. To this day, many of my friends are like, because of our friendship with you, all this anti-Muslim bigotry, like we were able to like sift through it. I was like the one tether to them, right? I joined the Muslim Student Association at UC Berkeley. I went to an all-boys Jesuit Catholic high school. So in a strange way, I've always navigated multiple cultures. And then thanks to social media, my career was able to rise thanks to interacting with different communities, both here and abroad. And so it was so interesting that I'll talk about generation change for a second, but actually, when I went to Singapore, a 4 generation change, right, on behalf of the State Department, where my job was to teach these students storytelling, social media, and how to come up with a compelling narrative to help their local community. And going to these 8 countries and setting up these chapters, what you find out is in many of these countries, it's like rote memorization. Teacher says, do this, you repeat it, or else. Very few of them were ever empowered to tell their stories. So they were sitting, I mean, these are grown ass men and women who are like crying. They're like, we'll do anything except tell a story. And I just waited for them to cry. I'm like, are you done crying? Get up and tell a story. For the first time ever, they told the story in front of a crowd. And slowly but surely, you saw that everyone has a story. They just need to be given the tools, right? And so even though I spoke English, I was able to cut through because if I remember I did one in Nepal where no one spoke English and they had a translator the whole time, but they were with me. I think if you connect with them on their humanity, you reach them at their level. It worked. Stories have a way of really transcending and bridging cultures, right? So I remember I went to Singapore one time, and this lady, this hijabi woman, born and raised in Singapore, who's like half Malay and half Chinese. I know this because she told me. Gives me a note and says, "Read this later." So after my presentation, I read the note. It's a handwritten note where she goes, "I just want to thank you because I've been reading your articles for the past couple of years, and even though you're American, your perspective has helped me come to terms with my multi-hyphenated identity and give me confidence." I'm sitting there thinking, I'm sitting in America writing these articles in English, and somehow they're reaching someone in Singapore. So we underestimate the power of words, of language, of stories, right? And there's a power there where it was really humbling to me that here I am. Who am I? I'm nobody, sitting there in California at the time, writing stories that were very culturally specific, but they affected this woman, hijabi Muslim Singaporean woman, like across the country. And so it's with this type of cultural awareness, I was very lucky, and I have to mention this, is that my father and my mother, there was a period in high school when they had a little bit of money, And they said, you know, you have money, you should spend it. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. And we have a little bit of money right now, and we want you to see the world. Expose yourself to different cultures, learn, be curious, see how other people live. So I remember we went to Turkey, we went to Egypt, we went to Morocco, we went to Pakistan a lot. When did Umrah in Saudi Arabia, went to Portugal. Like, it was a period of a couple of years, and you go there, and it's very humbling because you realize the world is large. The world is bigger than your isolated cocoon. You see how pretty much everyone's kind of the same. They just are a little bit different. So instead of eating biryani, they eat paella. Instead of speaking Urdu, they speak Spanish. There's always an aggressive mother-in-law. There's a mom who's worried and wants you to like eat food, right? You have to respect the unique differences, but it also allowed me to see the through line of how people have many similarities. It just has a different flavor, if you will, a different costume. That's all it is. And so it was very pivotal. I think it was very unconscious, but that exposure allowed me to really go into this whole concept of we live not in a melting pot. I don't want to melt into anyone. The world is a bouillabaisse. It's a salad. And so the world is more rich and delicious if we invest in diversity and multiculturalism, the buzzwords that everyone's scared of right now. You asked me a simple question, I gave you a TED talk. I'm sorry.
That's a wonderful answer. But I do have a bigger question, and you're welcome to expound. What is your passion?
Oh, that's you know, there are many passions. You know, I used to tell people what's probably more important than passion is purpose, but passion can help you get to purpose. And for me, the passion is in no specific order. My wife, my kids, my faith, food, storytelling. I really enjoy that. I think I try not to overthink it because you ask me and I'm like, what pops out? So food, family, faith, fun. And for me, storytelling has always been a lot of fun. Whether it's writing, whether it's having a microphone, whether it's like, you know, being creative, you know, I feel like that's, I don't even know if I have a superpower. It's something I do okay. It's allowed me to like sustain my life, right? It's something that's really fun for me. I don't sit there and count the hours. I would do it for free. I did it when I was poor. And so you have to be dumb enough to do something when you're poor that doesn't really give you much money, and that it has to be a passion attached to it, or else what's the point?
There you go. I cannot thank you enough. I feel as though I know you better, and I'm hoping that that the actual members will know you so well they cannot resist coming to a talk by a true dedicated storyteller. Does it get better than that?
I
Thank
hope
you
so.
so much.
How many people are we hoping for?
Thousands.
Whatever. Even if we get a few, it's fine.
It's been a delight speaking with you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.